What's up, everybody? Shawn here, back with another live Live to Roll. So, we're back here with an awesome show today. Great guest, talking some rugby, Paralympics, and life. We'll do a few introductions. Well, Tom and I will, and we'll let Chuck get into a little bit more of an introduction. But I am Shawn. I'm a C5, C6 quad from a snowboarding accident, coming up on 19 years now. Tom, why don't you give a little intro?
What's up, everybody? If you don't know me, I'm Tom Conaway, C6B quadriplegic for the last 25 years. And super excited, we got a world champion, Paralympian in the building, Mr. Chuck Aoki. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Do you mind maybe introducing yourself for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed the pronunciation, Tom. So very
Okay,
well
cool.
done. Very well done. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here on the Live the Roll show. Super honored and excited to chat with you all. My name is Chuck Aoki. I'm a three-time U.S. Paralympian in the sport of wheelchair rugby. I've been to this past year. Actually, went to my fourth ever World Championship, which was kind of amazing. And I have a rare genetic condition actually that was sort of what brought me into adaptive sports in the wheelchair world. It's called hereditary sensory autonomic neuropathy type 2 with avascular necrosis, which I'm sure everyone will remember and be able to write back to me later. But
Definitely.
basically, I have no sensation in half my arms and half my legs. So like knees down, elbows down, I don't feel anything. And so I like to say what I have is really kind of a mismatch of a lot of disabilities in terms of I don't have a sensation like a lot of SCIs don't have, but I do have, I'm not paralyzed. I can still move my legs some. And so I've got kind of a mix of things going on, but, essentially it's led me to all kinds of challenges with my health when I was younger, broke my legs a lot, had to start using a wheelchair full time. As I got older, got infection in my hands, lost most of my fingers. So I've got kind of hands that look crazy like this. It's been a heck of a journey, but super excited to be here and chat with you all and hopefully get some good questions. And yeah, pumped to be here.
As far
Yeah, thanks,
as
Chuck.
like your level of function, can you ambulate? Are you wheelchair bound full time? Um, like,
For
what's that
sure.
situation?
Yeah. So what had happened for me was growing up, I learned how to walk kind of as a little kid. But I walked really weird, for lack of a better way to put it. Like I walked on my knees and my legs would kind of bow out, and doctors were like, "Well, this is kind of strange, but we won't worry about it too much." Until I was about six, and when I broke my leg walking on it, and then I kept walking on it because I couldn't feel it. And so, like, I
Yeah.
walked on it for like 6 weeks. Yeah, it's not ideal for your leg, believe it or not, to do that.
No,
Yeah.
I
And
believe that.
so that kind of started a process of where I would walk a little bit. I would injure myself, use a wheelchair, go back to walking like with a walker or something, kind of trying to figure out if I could go back and forth. Until I think I was about 10 years old when a doctor said, "Look, if you want to have any function left in your legs at all, you have to use a wheelchair. You have to do it full time." So I use a wheelchair full time now. I can still ambulate a little bit. So like getting onto a plane, I'll walk onto a plane. If I have to go up a step or two, I can go up a couple steps. But I use a chair, 98, 99% of the time. But I'm super grateful and lucky to, like I said, have this little bit of function that got preserved for me at a young age. So I could walk a little, but certainly
Yeah.
not something I do a lot.
And
Yeah.
forgive me if I missed it, but what is the actual name of the condition that affects you?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
didn't
for
catch that,
sure.
Tom?
You don't remember it already, Tom? Come on, man.
I'm sorry.
So it's called hereditary sensory autonomic neuropathy type 2. And so hereditary just, means it was passed down. It's recessive. So like
Yeah.
my parents don't have it. My younger brother doesn't have it. We don't know anybody in the family who has it. It's super, super rare. And then the sensory part is the lack of sensation. So like I said, no sensation, elbows down, knees down. And then the other part that's actually kind of interesting, the autonomic component, another one similar to SCIs, I actually don't sweat below my elbow or below my knees and on my hands. Like I don't have any sweating there. I sweat plenty everywhere else. Don't worry, my fellow rugby players can tell you that. But I actually don't sweat in parts of my body, which is kind of interesting. So it's a mismatch. And like I was saying, there's type 2, and there's actually 5 types, and actually one of the milder types. Because if you go all the way up to type 5, you have no sensation in your entire body. So that would be
Oh,
wild,
wow.
to say the least.
Crazy. Super
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, the autonomic part of SDI is always the most fascinating to me too. I just
Oh yeah.
recently started sweating, like as of a couple of years ago, like when I started getting extreme AD or like really serious discomfort. I used to get clammy or like maybe like very mild sweat, but now I'm dripping, and it's like a weird change to my
Yeah.
SDI, which like I haven't really experienced most of my life, but super interesting. So considering your kind of this mixture of a couple different things, what's your, I guess, your point for rugby? Like, what are you
Mm.
considered? So like most
Yeah.
quads are like what 1 or 0.5, right? So
Oh,
what's Chuck?
they vary, man. We're all over.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, SCI quads really I think get about as high as I'd say 2.25, and usually you at this point in the game, the way it's kind of evolved, I'd say there's not too many SCIs above that. I mean, Shawn, I don't know what you think, but anyway.
I mean, yeah, there's not as too many left that are I think above like class 3 and 3/5s. You have to be.
Yeah.
I feel like those ones almost end up getting classed out. They're so high functioning, like it's like basically paras and different.
Right. I
And
think
if
So
anybody's not super familiar, the way wheelchair rugby works is there's a point ranking system for players, and that based on your level of function. So if you're higher level of function, you get scored higher or lower. You guys educate me.
higher. Yeah. So you go
yeah,
higher. So like
so I'm a
you're,
point
you're
five. I'm the lowest point. Like that. That's a and Chuck, you're a 3, right? Is that?
yeah. So I was going to say, so I'm a 3.0. So I'm not quite the highest, but the second the highest. So I've got, Shawn and I can kind of compare. It might be useful for people. So I've got core function, so I can like bend and lean independently. A little bit of leg function, like I said. My hands are pretty messed up. Like I have significantly worse hands than even some 2-pointers, and actually in some ways worse than some like low point punters, because there's literally nothing there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm a 3. So that's kind of how I get into sport, is with the hands like this. But then I've got a little bit, like I said, the core to kind of make up for it. Versus Shawn, and if you want to talk about kind of what your function is, so people get a sense of it.
Yeah. So as a point five, I pretty much have like no hand function, no triceps, no core, and like pretty much like very limited function. So like as a point five, I'm typically not a ball handler. I'm trying to like set picks. I'm blocking for guys like Chuck and the bigger, the faster guys that can move a little quicker and get the ball around the court a little faster. I'm typically more of like a like football. I would be like an offensive lineman or like a line like like I'm blocking for my running back. Like I'm trying
Yeah.
Well,
essentially.
I love that because I don't know, like every role is important. Like without those players, like without those kinds of players and stuff, like the whole like system falls apart. So I
Oh,
think it's very cool that like there can be a role for everybody. Even if you are as high functioning. Like I love that.
totally. Tom, I think that's what I love so much about, wheelchair rugby in particular, but also Paralympic sport as a whole, is that like we find roles for everybody. We really do.
Yeah.
And to your point, the system falls apart without them. Like I said, I'm a 3.0. I have to play with a 1.0 or a 0.5 if I'm going to play. Like I literally have to have one of those people on the court with me. And I think that's so cool. And I think a lot of people miss that sometimes in able-bodied sports, because the way I always describe it is like, it's if in the NBA, you can have a 7-foot guy. Like, sure, that's no problem. But then you have to
Yeah.
have a guy under 5'5", and people are like, "Oh, interesting. I never thought about that."
Yeah,
I'm
that-
like, yeah, like it's one of the weirdest meritocracies in the world. I like to say, but it works. It's a cool
Yeah.
system. I really appreciate it. I think it's really cool. So,
And I
No,
love it too because it allows someone like me with less function that probably couldn't compete at a lot of things, but it gives me a purpose and like something to actually compete like for, like because I'm competing with other point fives at my level, so
right.
it's a level playing field. Like I'm trying to do like it's cool. It's really that I lost that for a few years before I found rugby, that sense of competition, and like that's one of the things I love most about rugby, to be honest.
No doubt.
So
So Chuck, I did a little bit of research before we hopped on the pod about your like athletic background and stuff, and I know that you were into basketball a little bit before you made it into rugby. But have you always been athletic? Have you always been competing?
Oh, for sure. I've loved sports. I think my first word was literally ball, like as a toddler. So yeah, sports has
Yeah.
been in a passion in my blood. My first ever dream was to be a baseball player for Minnesota Twins. I'm from Minnesota. So sports has been something that's always been a huge part of my life. I played, like I said, when I was a little kid, I tried playing soccer. I tried playing baseball. Those ones were just hard because I was, running around, and I was really bad at that. I'd fall over a lot, or I would get tired really easily and stuff. So I switched off of that pretty quickly. But yeah, sports have always been something I've loved to do. Like you said, basketball is what I started with, and I love that. I started playing when I was 7 years old, actually. Played all the way through high school, and met some of my best friends. The best man at my wedding was a basketball teammate of mine. So basketball is a near and dear to my heart. But what I always think is so interesting, and part of why I think I've been able to be as successful as I've been at rugby, is in wheelchair basketball, I was the lowest end function player, right? Like I was the low pointer in basketball, and so I had to learn
Yeah.
to do, quote unquote, the dirty work, the picks, the seals, if I scored like 2 points in a game. That was like a big achievement for me, you know, in basketball. And so my job was really to do that work. And so then when I switched to rugby, you know, I was suddenly on the top of the food chain, so to speak. And it was like, oh, okay. You know, it gave me an appreciation, I think, for, you know, how important it was for all the different parts of the game to work together and how I couldn't just go out and dominate. So yeah, like I said, I've always played sports, always loved them, pretty much my whole life. But yeah, basketball was my first, but rugby is my now, you know, my passion.
Was there
Do you
like
still
an
play
adaptive-
much basketball, Chuck, at all, or just for fun?
Just for fun a little bit, you know. Unfortunately, my calendar has me pretty busy for rugby. We go to Japan in 2 weeks, and it's crazy. So it takes me all over.
Well, Japan. So I know you were there for the 2020 Tokyo Games, which
Mhm.
must have been cool. And what are you going back for? Is it like World Championships or just like big tournament?
So it's just they have kind of had a yearly competition in Japan. Basically, the idea is just to have more wheelchair rugby events across the world, you know, at a high level. And so we're heading there for a competition between, I believe, ourselves, France, Japan, and Australia. And so we're taking a newer squad. We're some new guys. We're really excited to get over there and play and compete. But it's a lot of fun. Japan's a really cool country, and they've really embraced wheelchair rugby, actually, which is really cool to see. They had like a manga with it in it. It was really cool. Very, very awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, they're Japan is actually like number one place I want to visit. You actually have some like family heritage from Japan, correct?
I do, yeah. My
Yeah.
family growing up is on my dad's side is all Japanese. They were actually from Hiroshima, so there's not a lot of records left, unfortunately. And they had since moved to the U.S. well after that, thankfully. But yeah, my family history is all my heritage is Japan. You know, I was really excited to actually get to travel around some after the games, and then of course
I imagine.
what happened and wasn't able to do that so much. But yeah, it's a place that I really love going, getting to see, and the people are just always so friendly and so welcoming.
Yeah, you know, that's been my experience with. I haven't been to Japan, but just you know, like Japanese people that I met, it's just like everyone says going there too. It's just like one of the most like friendly, welcoming, like cool environments to go visit and be a part of. So I definitely want to make it over there one day and go and visit. But that's super cool. So how long ago did you get into rugby?
Yeah, so I got into rugby. Wow, it's 2023 now, so I have to start doing the math differently in my head. Let's see here. So I got into rugby my junior year of high school, which would have been, I think, 2008 probably. So it's been about, you know, talk about 15 years. So I, like a decent amount of people, I think, saw Murder Ball, you know, the documentary about
Yeah.
the 2004 U.S. Paralympic team. And like I said, at the time I was a kid, 14, 15 years old. And I saw this, you know, I saw Mark Zupan and I saw Andy Cohn and Scott Hogson. I saw them talking trash and like partying and smash. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, this looks amazing. I want to do this sport. And of course my mom was like, oh no, like you're not doing this sport. Like, no chance. And, you know, back and forth. Come on, please, please, please. She's like, all right, fine. They finally relented, you know, and hell yeah, exactly. They let me go to a practice in Minnesota, like I said, where I was from, in Courage County, with the Minnesota, what were we called? The North Stars at the time, we were called. So I show up to a practice, you know, and I'm like I said, I was 16 years old, and so I probably weighed 130 pounds at most. I was a pretty skinny little kid, and you know they kind of looked me up and down. And Joe Delgrave was there, who, you know, future national team player,
Yeah.
current head coach, and you know a lot of guys who'd been around for a long time kind of look at me and go, "You want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to play." They're like, "Okay." So put me in the chair. You know, I was pretty quick, so I'm kind of feeling myself like, "All right, I got this." And then boom, they sent me flying in the walls, and boom, they sent me crashing. And this gym we played in, which I'm sure everybody's played in all kinds of different gyms, there wasn't actually a sideline on the one side. It was just like the line was there and then the wall was there. So like there wasn't
Oh,
actually a
wow.
sideline. So I crashed into that wall. I don't even know how many times that first practice. And so I got beat up and knocked around, and, you know, sort of on the way home, my dad is the one who took me, because he took me to all my sporting events growing up. We're driving home, you know, we're just kind of hanging out. And he looks at me and says, "So, like, how was it?" And I was like, "Oh, I loved it. Like, that was awesome." And he's like, "Okay, sounds good." And so, you know, I think Shawn and you guys, you know, that we know this about rugby. If you put someone in the chair and they get hit for the first time, it's either kind of apprehensive, like, "Oh, I'm not so sure about it," or it's like a eyes light up,
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, let's do this some more." I was definitely a let's do this some more kind of person. So
I,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
how I got
found
started. Yeah, 16 years ago, 15, 16 years ago now.
I found that feeling because like I remember the first time I like went to a rugby practice And then
Mhm.
I've done it a bunch of times at like different adaptive rec events out here in SoCal and stuff.
Yeah.
Just like hop in for a couple matches or something. But that feeling of kind of getting banged up and like, ran into or like
Yeah.
ran into someone else, like it's
Yeah.
really liberating in a certain sense. Like I feel
It
like,
is.
being in the chair, like where if not caught, I'll just like, it's like, okay, like always, make sure that's not happening, and then to
Yeah.
kind of like purposely hop in the chair with the intention of kind of banging around and getting beat up. It feels good, to like do it safely, like kind of positive intention too. At least that was
Oh,
my
totally.
experience.
No, I couldn't agree more.
100%,
I
dude.
think, yeah, it's the one time in the world where, yeah, to your point, you're not fragile. It's like, no, you're out there to like, and I know we're not fragile, but the world kind of looks at
Yeah.
you as this, as very
That's
careful, these things, and you get out there and it's like, oh no, like you can't like be worried about getting hit because you're gonna get hit. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
liberating is a like you said, it's kind of a weird way to describe getting knocked around, but it's true. I would totally agree
Yeah.
with that. You know?
Yeah, and it's funny too because I remember watching Murderball for the first time. Like, I remember it got kind of popular, and my mom like rented it from like our
Mhm.
local movie place that like happened to get it in or have it or whatever. And I remember it being very inspired too, just like seeing the guys partying and like just kind of broing around and like pranking like the hotel people and
Yeah.
all that like stuff. I was like, damn, like that's very cool. And I was like, I think right at the end of middle school, about to go into high school too. So it just was
Mhm.
very like inspiring at that time in my life where I was starting to think about like, okay, like what is my life going to look like, in 5 or 6 years, like after college, after high school, going into
Mhm.
college and stuff like, because I just hadn't thought about it too much at that point. But I remember watching that film and not so much being inspired to like hop in like the rugby chair and, like do the athletics, but just getting out and living. It was very cool to see those guys just so casually going about everything, from their chairs and stuff like that. Thought it was really inspiring and very, very cool movie too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really think that like the rugby obviously was really exciting and fun, but you're right.
Yeah,
It was guys just like being guys, for lack of a better way to put it. And obviously I know it's different for guys versus girls in chairs, but it's like as a guy in a chair, we have our certain insecurities, I think, and stuff that's challenging for us. But to see, like you said, they're just partying, they're drinking beers, they're talking smack, like it's like, oh,
yeah.
okay, I could do this. Like
Just
I could do
like
this.
candidly talking about like stuff like sex and things like that.
Yeah.
I remember like being so embarrassed with my parents in the room. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, young teenager, like parents in the room, like they're talking so
Yeah.
candidly about sex. I think I like rolled into the other room or something. But it was also like one of the first times I started like it popped in my head like thinking about sex and stuff like I maybe thought about it but not so much thought about navigating that like what that
Right.
would mean like the implications and stuff and it really did bring that to my attention and I was just very grateful for that at the time because I thought it was super important. There wasn't really anything else, like making me think about stuff like that at the time. So to get all of that from, like a 90-minute film, I was like, I was very grateful to have like watched it at the time that I did. Because it's important stuff to consider and think about, especially when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
and
I
that's
mean, totally.
another
Oh,
thing.
go ahead.
I was gonna say another thing about rugby and about that and the film and stuff like that's one of my favorite things about rugby. I think like the competition, that stuff's great, but it's the camaraderie, the friends I've made. Like I have some of the closest relationships and friends with rugby players and other people with disabilities now. But rugby's the first kind of like it's what opened the door to me having like initially I think I was a little bit off put from like having like wheelchair friends. Like I was
Mhm.
kind of like I had my group of friends. I was like I have these friends already. Like
Right.
why do I need these other wheelchair friends? But then
Yeah.
rugby opened that door, and once I started making these relationships and friendships, it's like it's totally changed my life. Like it's completely like now some of my best friends are in chairs. Like and that's it's just these relationships that I've made. Like yeah. So that's what
And
sports
now
and stuff brings.
that was like similar to my experience. Like I grew up in a small town. Not I like was very social, had a lot of friends, but no other friends in wheelchairs just because there was nobody else in a wheelchair in my town except for this like 40-year-old guy who was like a paraplegic and Jeff was like awesome and he was a mentor to me, but I just wasn't around other wheelchair users majority like until I was an adult. And then it wasn't that I was really against it, but I hadn't like thrust myself into that world too much. But man, am I so grateful that I did, because yeah, just the resources, the support, the camaraderie, amongst the community is, yeah, something that I'm very, very grateful for and very happy that I found. So that's just anybody watching. If you haven't found that local community, I really urge you to. And sometimes local is a loose word. Like I remember being like a teenager and my mom and dad like having to drive like an hour and a half for like an SCI support group, because that was the closest one to us at the time, which can be hard. But technology these days, with Zoom and stuff like this that we're doing right now, really does open the world up, the community up to individuals that maybe have live further away or just have a harder time leaving home. I think you can still find something really magical in the community, even through stuff like this. So just a little advice. And now, Chuck, going back to you, I guess I kind of glossed over this, but it just occurred to me. So you've been in a chair for, even in your adolescence growing up. That was my experience as well. Like I was injured when I was 4 years old. So I was, in the chair all through, my middle,
Yeah.
elementary, middle, high school and stuff. What was that like in your adolescence dealing with your disability, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, of course. I think it's it's a good question. I think it's so interesting the distinction that you have for people like me and yourself who grew up with, I'd say grew up with it, versus people like Shawn who acquired it later in life. I think it's such an interesting dynamic that I find fascinating, really interesting, kind of looking into. But yeah, so I was lucky in a lot of ways. I think growing up that I went to a school where people were pretty supportive. I didn't really get bullied or anything too much, which I know people who've had the experience of being bullied. I would say that I didn't feel too ostracized in terms of like I had a few friends. I didn't have like a ton of friends. I wasn't super popular, but I wasn't uncool, for lack of a better way to put it. My dog is coming in to say hello.
It's cool. We've welcomed dogs on the show.
This is Winnie to everybody out there. She's real smart. But yeah, so it wasn't too bad. I think that like I said, I was lucky that I had a few friends who were really great, really solid, just would always invite me to do stuff. And I never forget, I had one friend who would invite me to anything. And I mean anything. And it was like, I would show up sometimes like, dude, there's a bunch of stairs. He's like, oh, well, you can figure it out, right? And on the one hand, I was like, come on, dude, like really? But on the other hand, I appreciate he was always just like, no, like you're my friend and I'm going to invite you to this. And, I want you to be there. So like I said, I was lucky to have a really solid little group of friends. I think that I didn't really, get comfortable and find myself kind of to what we were just saying until I got into sports really deeply, though, if I'm being honest. I really think sports for me is what gave me the confidence to sort of go out and, let's talk here as a young boy, talk to girls and really put myself out there and kind of be more into public. I think I was pretty shy growing up, or nervous at least, around kind of putting myself out there. And I think a lot of that was the chair in my hands. Like I felt like, oh, I've got funny hands. I look weird. I use this chair. How could I ever, how could I dance to the girl? How am I going to sneak out of my house? Not that I snuck out of my house, but how am I going to do these things? Like, I can't do this kind of stuff. How am I going to go to this house party? It's up a bunch of stairs. Like, who's going to carry my chair? So I think that, growing up it wasn't, like I said, I'm very lucky that I found sports at a pretty young age, and it started to give me this sense, like we're talking about a community and folks that I knew and a really good group of friends. And then, like I said, as I improved at it, I started to hit this confidence, like, well, okay, like I'm pretty good at this. I should be able to, go out and do these things and talk and be confident in who I am. And I really think that it helped give me an identity that, like I said, just gave me the confidence to be who I am, and so I think that there were certainly times where it wasn't easy, especially when I was younger and couldn't really see the perspective on things. It's like, and I'm constantly having health challenges and in the hospital, out of the hospital, in the hospital, out of the hospital. There were certainly times like that where my health was just like, it was so frustrating. I can remember sitting in my room just thinking literally, like, why me? Like, why am I the one who has to go through this? Like, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do this. And I think we've all gone through periods like that in our lives, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, I think that I'm glad that I'm on the other side of it. And I know that it can get better, especially, as you both have said, with the community, and thankfully, I think in today's day and age, we can have a community that is across the country. It doesn't have to be right in our backyards. We can talk to people across the country, across the world, And I think that, I hate to keep saying it. It's easy for me to say because I've had a lot of success in rugby, but rugby really gave me that, and I truly believe it would have given me that if I had never made a Paralympic Games and if I had never gone on to be as successful as I am. I really think it still would have been that because, as we've said, you learn so many lessons. You learn about how to live life from people. The first time I saw somebody figuring out how to open a Ziploc, I was like, oh, that's how you do that. And he's like, yeah. I was like, these things are a pain in the ass. It's like, yeah, they really are. And just little stuff like that, I think really is what makes it so special, and really was what for me made rugby so special, is because it was the first time I encountered other people with hand impairments, because basketball is mostly paras, mostly amputees who have their own challenges, but don't have those really dexterity challenges, which is, I tell people, like, you don't understand how frustrating it is until you're trying to open something for like 10 minutes and you can't get it, and there's no like hope in sight. Like, it's hard to convey to people how frustrating that situation is.
Yeah.
So, having that community, I think, is what made rugby so special for me, and continues to be so special, I could say.
Well, I can super relate to all of that. Thank you for sharing. I, like you, find the experience of growing up with a disability really fascinating. Not only just like having gone through it myself, but I think it fascinates me even more so because like I always want to hear about other people's lived experiences and how like was similar, how it's different, and stuff like that. And I found a lot of like echoes of similarity too, because I wasn't very social. I was like, just like you said, I had friends. I was like cool, but I wasn't like popular or anything.
Right.
And then, until I kind of found my niche, and my niche wasn't athletics. Mine was more like academics and science and like nerdy stuff like that. But still, like I found a very similar camaraderie and support, like group within that space as well. And while like, I know that rugby and basketball and other athletic things too, I think a lot of those niches like exist in other communities as well, especially for disabled people. Like one that I've been looking a lot more into just because I started like streaming is like gaming and like esports and stuff. Like I found there's a huge like community of like adaptive gamers, and like they just support each other, and like online, and like equipment and like accessible things, and like just this whole huge community of support and love. And I think that can be found in a lot of other spaces as well, be it art, be it academics, be it whatever it may be. The world is so open nowadays, and it's so easy for people to connect. So I really do push everybody, if you haven't found that community yet, and you maybe are finding yourself wanting something like that, really push yourself to go out and seek it, because I think it's amazing and super important. It can be hugely beneficial to our mental health and just socializing and functioning and opening up opportunities too.
And I'm just gonna take a second to shout out some of the people in the chat from our community and stuff, that like JJ Mack, she's from the UK and also a rugby player. I think she said she's a 0.5. Rugby community, like everybody, everybody in our community as well feels the same. And just I want to shout out Olivia. Who else we got in the chat?
Shout out Ben for the $3 super chat, man.
And Ben, thank you for the super chat.
We appreciate you, Ben. You're so awesome, man. Lots of love. I hope your ankle's doing okay, dude. I know you were hurting recently, dealing with some AD and stuff. I hope you're recovering good. And we had an awesome question from Olivia, which I think would be like kind of a great segue to kind of the Paralympic stuff. You're cool with us going there.
For sure, totally.
And this, like, kind of just generally, what is it like traveling with a rugby team and a bunch of guys in wheelchairs and all the equipment and stuff? Like, first of all, how does that go? Do you all travel together? And how is the equipment treated? I think, like, it's a very common conversation that's being had nowadays, like traveling and, using wheelchairs and stuff. They're not so easy on your equipment. But what is that like with a team of equipment,
And having 2 chairs a person and...
So I'm going to knock on every piece of wood I can find, like just everything.
All right.
So luckily, our experience traveling, I should say this is really specific to the national team, and our travel has been pretty good, luckily. And it could be totally luck. It could be because, in the day we usually flew United and they were a Team USA sponsor, and now we fly Delta, which is a Team USA sponsor. And so I think there's a little bit of like added understanding that, hey, we should probably be a little more careful with this guy's stuff. Not that they shouldn't be careful with everybody's stuff, of course, don't get me wrong. But luckily, I think in some ways there's this, when they get like these 20 wheelchairs, they look at it and first they say, oh God, what are we going to do with this? But I think there might be actually kind of ironically a little more like, all right, we got to be a little more thoughtful about this with these rather than, I've seen them with my everyday chair, just kind of just toss it in there and say, all right, there we go. Like it's good to go and off it goes. But it's an interesting process traveling with 20 some people and 20 wheelchairs. It certainly takes longer to check in. We get to the airport about 4 hours before our flight board, which means that we're leaving ungodly hours from airports. We were most recently in Colombia last year, about a year ago. We had to leave for the airport, I think, at midnight for a 6 a.m. flight. So that was miserable. So those things are kind of tiresome, but luckily our survival rate of chairs is overall pretty good. We travel with a mechanic, so if we ever have any major cracks or issues, we can usually get them fixed up. But like I said, luckily, and part of this is probably because they're rugby chairs, they're built to take a little more pressure than your average everyday chair. We're pretty good. We're pretty lucky. They go well. But I tell this to everybody who travels with disability: a little bit of patience, as hard as it can be and as frustrating it can be, goes a really long way. It just does. And that most people are trying their best. They really are. And there's some people who are going to be jerks, and there's some people who are going to be a hard time. It's going to be frustrating. There's going to be times that it's irritating. But if you can go into it with a little bit of grace, a little bit of patience, it can go a long way. And I know that there's a lot of really interesting kind of things they're coming up with air travel that I would love to see, in terms of like, especially for people who use power chairs, be able to stay in them. I think there's a lot of really interesting potential going on there. But like I said, we're pretty lucky in that it's worked out fairly well. But I see these horror stories all the time of people, I don't think, I continue to say this too. It's like people don't realize it would be like if, walking off a plane, someone said, hang on, and just broke someone's legs. It's like, you would never do that. An airline would never do that. And it's what you're doing when you break a wheelchair, and it's what you're doing when you say, oh, well, you can just get a replacement. It's like, well, can I replace my legs overnight? It's like, no, you can't, And so I think that, for me, obviously there's a lot of technological goals that can be done that can be really helpful, but also a lot of it is just education, and if you say to somebody like the workers, say, hey, 2 seconds, think about this. This is someone's way of getting around. You say, oh, okay, I get it. I'll take a second. Most, I like to think that most people can be reflective in that moment, and so I try to, I think education is as big a part of this as anything. But yeah, it's a mess when we travel. We're kind of going through the airport with our squad, and you always get kind of looks, and people are like, "Where are you guys going? You're part of some team, right?" And have the conversations. But I look at it as a chance to tell people about wheelchair rugby and being a wheelchair rugby evangelist. So it's it's a lot of it's a lot of fun though, because it is also fun to get to travel the world with a bunch of cool guys and gals and get to see cool places and do cool things. And obviously we take a little bit longer to load the plane, but all in all, it's a pretty good experience, and I'm not going to complain too much about getting to travel the world.
Now, are you allowed to bring along a companion? Like, how does that go as far as like caregivers and things like that? Like, it's just covered for those who need it. It's like required, or they're like a couple of people that just travel with the team and help everybody out.
Yeah, so we always have a couple people who travel with the team whose job is caregiver support, kind of whatever. Like I need help sometimes, our 0.5s, everybody needs help with something sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing we talk about actually decent amount of the team is sort of like, what is the difference between, help that you need versus what do we want to push you to be able to do yourself? Because the reality is being on Team USA is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not something that everybody gets to do. And so what is that line between, what can we say, what is independence that we would like you should be able to try to attain versus we need to be able to support you with this to be the most successful you can. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so I think it's an ongoing conversation. We're certainly never going to tell somebody, no, we're not going to help you in a situation. But, it's one of these things where to make it to that level, you're probably not going to have a full-time person with you 24/7. You're going to need to be able to be independent in some capacities, to be successful. It's a challenge. I think it's something that it's never, we don't get it perfect, I'm sure, all the time. Obviously, we'd love it if every person could have someone just with them all the time, but that's just not how life works. We certainly don't have the money for that. We're not the NFL. We do have a couple people. We always have a couple staff who are there to kind of help. And, we're really lucky to have some of the most dedicated, passionate, caring staff in the world. Really, like these people make our sport tick. They make us exist. We could not do what we do without them. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah,
yeah, support
I thought
staff.
it was just really interesting what you said because it's a conversation we have on here sometimes. Well, a lot of what we talk about is independence.
Mm,
Achieving your highest level of independence that every individual wants to achieve.
yeah,
Some that's different for I think everybody. Every
totally.
disability is different. Like what's realistic for everybody, and then
Hmm.
like what some people end up achieving. Just like might not be realistic for everybody. It's like great that you can do it, but how realistic is that?
Right.
And it's just like what you said. I think it's a very nuanced conversation. I think it's a very great conversation to keep having too. And it's also like a sensitive one because, who are you to say, what is like realistic for somebody else, I think that definition, I think a lot of times it does come down to the individual, but, also like, let's be honest, let's talk candidly, like, let's be realistic
Yeah.
about this too, and I think especially in regards to, like Team USA, it's like you're on
Yeah.
this national stage and stuff. I think that is super interesting and very, very kind of unique. It's cool. It sounds like everybody's, got everything that they need and, is cared for. But I also kind of like that, you know, it's okay to, push people to, at least have that conversation. It's like, okay, like, and
Hmm.
it's something I love about rugby too, is like Shawn has told me all the time, like how much independence he's found from just like his rugby bros pushing him, being like, dude, like, what the heck are you doing? Doing
Yeah.
it this way, man. It's like, come on, dude, like you could do this yourself. Why don't you? I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. Sean was jumping quick. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the beauties of rugby. I think that, like the reality is that I think a fellow disabled person, particularly at SCI, particularly one of the same functional level as you, can tell you, hey, you can do that. That an able-bodied PT or OT just they can't do that. They're not going to look at
Yeah.
somebody, and
No.
say, hey, you should be able to do that. It's like, well, who the hell are you to tell me that, lady or guy? Like, but Sean can look at Tom and say, dude, I could, you could, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what's so important, as you guys are saying about finding that community, is you find the people to push you. You know?
Yep. And that was for me too. That's what when I first started coming to rugby, there was definitely things I was not doing independently for myself. And other guys, other point fives were looking at me like, you can do that. And it does, like you said, you can't hear that from an able bodied friend, family member, therapist, whatever, doctor. You have to hear it from somebody that's doing it, is experiencing it, that's gone through it. So it's just, yeah, it's totally that's like that's what made me independent. Before rugby, I was fully dependent on caregiving and like family, everything. And
Right.
since rugby, I have the ability to be fully independent if necessary. Just
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult, so I don't do it all the time.
Well, that's it. I think it has to be sustainable too. It's like if exhausting yourself to your bones every single day is independence. Is that really independence?
No,
Not really.
exactly.
Well,
You know?
especially for something like rugby, it's like you're killing yourself traveling and caring for yourself in hotels and stuff, but then you got to compete on a world stage and like be competitive and it's like all right, no, it's like wow, we're traveling to Japan in an unfamiliar area, whatever it
Yeah.
is, it's like it's okay if you need more help, and I love that like it sounds like there are people there to provide that. And, I don't know, it's something like I lived at home for 15 years before I moved out, like tried to live independently and live on my own, and
Mhm.
I just wasn't independent for most of that time.
Yeah.
Like I had family members around, I like mom and dad and brother and sister, and like people around all the time, so I just never
Mhm.
really like was in a situation where I questioned like whether or not I should be doing this. And my parents, to their credit, were really great and did push me to do a lot for myself. But I don't think I did my first independent transfer until like 13 or 14 years after I was paralyzed, which is a long time to be in a wheelchair before
Yeah.
like you learn how to transfer. But
Right.
coming down, like moving out, still I set myself up with a lot of care every day, all the time. I had somebody around just because I thought that's what I needed. But like finding the community, and finding like seeing guys like Shawn, seeing other examples, it really like was an inspiration for me. It wasn't even so much like being told from like other quads who had a higher function or function more. It was just seeing others do it.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend, she's a C6 quad too, and like She's fully independent with her care, and could do literally everything that she needed to like function
Yeah.
day in and day out on her own. And I was like, how the hell do I get there? And
Yeah.
while that's not realistic for me, like I have, it just has taught me a lot, pushed me to achieve a higher level of independence, even if it's not the way that I operate 24/7, 365. It's given me so much confidence, so much security with traveling, and just instances where I might not have a caregiver and stuff. It's not like life or death anymore. It's not like even necessarily a scary thing, because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like I can do that for a couple days a week, on my own. And um, I love that. It's been a big change in my life too. And yeah, it's a big part of about the disabled community, and just seeing others. It can be very inspiring, and I think it's just like what you all said too. It's not easier for like another wheelchair homie to tell you like, hey bro, maybe have you thought about doing this? It's easier to hear that from someone who's not in a chair, for sure.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think that, yeah, it is like you said, what someone else does may not be realistic for you, but when you see it, that's how you start to say to yourself, oh, they can do that. I wonder if I can do that. And maybe the answer is no, but maybe something else you can do or something else. But if you never, to your point, if you never saw it, how could you know? How could you
Yeah.
ever even know? And, like you said, we've been talking about this whole time, why it's so critical to find those communities, like you said, whether it's in sports, whether it's in gaming, whether it's in arts, or whatever. It's finding those niches and people to tell you, and to my background is in teaching, and there's this concept called scaffolding, which is basically like whenever you're teaching a lesson to a student, you want to put it just a little bit above their ability level, something they can do, something they're not doing right now. And this independence is kind of that realm. Is the reality is, to get more independent, you have to kind of go beyond what you're comfortable doing right now. You just do,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it's scary, it's not easy, and you want to have someone there to support you in it, for sure. But to your point, it can make your life a lot better. You don't have to your point, you can be more comfortable traveling. You can say, okay, if I can't have something today or tomorrow, I'm okay. I can make it a couple days, and I think it's hard. You can't put a price tag on that feeling and that confidence, but it really is incredible.
Yeah, I just want to put that statement on repeat. You can't put a price on it. It opens up the world. It can open up your world. If like you said, it doesn't have to be, necessarily, like, if you want to even call it like a burden to take on every day and all the time. But I think it can really help with your confidence, and help with like just opening up, like, this word opportunities in the future. Uh, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in my way, especially like hanging out with my able-bodied buddies and stuff, years ago, and then like invite me like stay overnight or for like a weekend thing and stuff, and I'll just say no, because like I couldn't imagine myself, like handling my care in any significant
Right.
way, on those weekends and stuff. But it took me 5 6 years of like working to figure out how to tackle a lot of this stuff. And a lot of it was like talking to other quads and talking to Shawn and
Right.
talking to other people that have
Yeah.
done it. But now I can do that. Here
Hey.
it is, 25 years into my injury, like I'm discovering independence I never dreamed of,
Right.
which is very cool and amazing for me. And also, like, I think important for other people too. It's like, because that can be a hard thing being 20 years post injury. And, it's like, man, I got a big uphill battle to climb, but it's a mountain that you can climb. It's like a battle that can be, achieved.
Right.
That's not a limiter for you in any capacity.
And
I
you don't
don't
have to
think.
climb it yourself. That's the
Yeah,
other part. You can have a guide. You can have someone holding your hand. You can have someone get you up the hill together. You know.
Exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, I got a lot of quad guys that will ask me. It's like, oh, it's like I got a caregiver all day long, and it's kind of weird. It's like hard, like doing things for myself, because there's always like somebody around. It's like, dude, like give 'em a break. Give them,
Yeah.
30 minutes or an hour off. Or it's like they can watch you, and like part of their job can be, if you fail, to like step in and help you out, like help you learn along the way, because
Right.
a lot of that learning is going to be failure and like needing somebody to step in and help you out because you dropped the thing for the fifth time, or it's like you've been trying for an hour and you are too tired now and you don't need some help, and that's okay. Like there's lots of ways you can be supported through this, and it's just I love what you said. It's like the scaffolding, it's like
Yeah.
building the scaffolding up,
Yeah.
and slowly getting there. Because that's really how it is. It's just baby. I say instead of
The
scaffolding,
baby
I say
steps,
baby
yeah.
steps. Because
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
saying that all the time. It's just baby steps, but it's the same thing. Set
It is.
realistic goals for yourself. Set achievable goals, and I promise, like that bar will move on its own. Like
It
the
will.
more you achieve, because it just does. Like you do it, and it lights a fire, and it
Yeah.
gets you excited. It's like, oh shit, like I can do this. Like I wonder if
Right.
I could do that.
Yep.
And it just like that keeps going, the
Hmm.
stone keeps tumbling downhill.
And that could be
Yeah.
with everything in life, I feel like, because it works for our independence. For rugby, you can continue to push yourself in academics. Whatever you're pursuing, just look at it with small steps, take your time and build, like that's just the way everything goes and the way that's how you get to the top. So, um,
Now, just to shift a little bit, tell me about the Paralympics. What is it like being on a world stage like that? So you've been three times. If not incorrect, it's what, Sydney, Denmark, and Tokyo, or London, Denmark, and Tokyo, or something like that.
So it's you've got this is such a humble brag. So you've got my different world championships and Paralympics a little
Okay,
mixed
I'm all over the
up.
place.
the world,
Okay.
because there's world championships as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So my three Paralympic games have been in London in 2012, which was my first, Rio in 2016, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and then Tokyo. Then Tokyo, it's funny, they call them the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics, but they were held in 2021. It's the
2021,
weirdest
yeah.
thing.
I
But
know,
they were
yeah.
why I don't argue with it, I just say it.
Pandemic
But
stuff, man.
yeah, exactly. But so no, I mean the Paralympics are they're a whole nother level. I mean it's hard to put it into words fully, other than the first thing I always I say or describe it as, it's like it's the first time when you go to it and you realize that you're really part of something bigger than yourself, because you're in the dining hall, for example, right, which is this massive thing. It's like they can fit like four 747s in there. It's huge.
Yeah.
And you look to your left and there's a bunch of athletes from, I don't know, China eating. And then you look ahead of you and there's a bunch of athletes from Italy, with people from Greece, with people from France, with people from Norway, with people from Egypt. You look to your right and you see people from Australia and Indonesia and Japan. And you realize, wow, I am just one person in this massive thing going on. It's truly the global stage, truly the world stage. And on that level, it's just so cool. You meet people from all over the world who have
Yeah.
all worked so hard to get to that level, who are some of the best at what they do, and it's humbling on the one hand. It truly is. You're like, wow, I'm literally surrounded by greatness. This is incredible. And so that is the one part of it, and that's just again, it's hard to fully describe the experience or put it into words, but it's an amazing thing, and to get to be a part of. And like I said, I'm very privileged. I'm very lucky that I've been able to do it. I like to think I've worked hard as well,
Yeah,
but it really is one of the greatest privileges in my life. And then competing at the Paralympics is unreal. I mean, it's if you played adapted sports in the U.S., that we've played in front of friends and family. It's about 10 people, and at most maybe there's 30 or 40 people in the gym. But the first time in London, my very first match, we played Great Britain in the sport of wheelchair rugby. In Great Britain, London did an amazing job of marketing and selling the sport and saying, "Come out, check it out." And we were in the tunnel. They put you in a tunnel before the game, and you're literally sitting next to the other team. And it was so loud in there, the walls were shaking. Like they were literally vibrating. And you could just hear the echoes out there. And the door opened, and we rolled out, and it was actually deafening. You could not hear. It was so loud. I was 5 feet away from somebody, and I was saying something, and you couldn't hear what they were saying. It was unbelievable. These are the kind of moments that they happen, and you're like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and I never will. And you can't buy this kind of experience. It's just the kind of thing that happens. And so, that was my first games. We took bronze, which was, a little bit of a letdown. Unfortunately, we wanted to do better than that. And so that was my first, but that was my first games, really amazing. Rio was my second games, same kind of thing. The crowds weren't quite as good up until the very end, and then the gold medal match happened. It was actually louder than the London game, which was hard. I couldn't believe it, but I looked at my team, a couple guys who'd been in London with me. I was like, it's louder here. They're like, yeah, it is. This is crazy. And
they're used to screaming at the soccer matches, so like they got the lungs, like they're ready to go.
That's what it is, exactly. Yeah, and so that was amazing. And then Tokyo, it was a little weird. I'll be honest, it was a little weird. But it was a pandemic games, and they did their best. And the people were great. The experience was still great. We of course came up a little short there, which was a disappointment. And and really the biggest disappointment was our friends and family couldn't be there, because one of the most special things I get to do before every game is I see my mom and I see my family, and I always wave to them. Because it's one of these things I'm a big believer in. It takes a village to be successful, and my village is really my family at its core. And they, they're the ones who, drove me to practice early, took me to doctor's appointments, made sure I could get there. They're the reason I can compete on the world stage, And so it was really, really a bummer not to be able to see them. After every game, you get a few minutes to see them before you have to get hustled back to the village. And so not being able to do that was a real bummer, but it was still, an amazing experience to get to be a part of. But it's a really special thing. It's a really special event, and I'm going for Paris. Hopefully I'll make it there. And, I really encourage folks who are, I encourage on two tracks. One, I encourage if you want to ever go to them, you should go. Like, they're amazing. You should go to the Paralympics. Yeah, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it too. You should go to the Paralympics and be a spectator. There's so many amazing sports. You'll see so many amazing athletes. It's a chance to check out the world, and you'll be surrounded by people with disabilities, which is really cool. To our point. It takes that community thing and ratchets it up to a global scale. And you're like, holy cow, like there's people with all kinds of disabilities here who do all kinds of amazing things I never imagined doing, and then, but on the same token, I think if folks really ever if you want to go for it, it's the kind of thing you can go for. The Paralympics are still relatively small, and you have to find something you're really passionate about, something you really care about. But I always say dream big. I think you should set your dreams as high as you can, and especially in the sports world. And there's a lot of paths to get to what you want to do. But anyway, to put a bow on it, it's an amazing experience. It's something I'm so privileged and so lucky to get to do. And I'm hopefully I'll get to do one more. And I'm super excited as well for the LA games, of course, to come up in 2028, because I think that's really going to put adapted sports, Paralympic sports on the map in the United States in a way that, as we've never seen before. It's going to be amazing. You guys are out in California, you know all about that. So.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for the 2028 games. I'm, excited for everyone to, come out to LA and visit Live to Roll, and we'll all go together and celebrate. It'll be super, super cool.
Hell yeah.
No, that sounds amazing, Chuck. I can only imagine how special and wild that is. I haven't had a chance to go to the Paralympics myself. I have had a chance to go. They do a lot of the prelims at UCLA at the Angel City Games for some of the sports, and I have had a chance to go and work and represent for a Triumph Foundation, which is like a nonprofit out here in Southern California. So I've been in the belly of the beast a little bit in terms of the prelims and stuff, and it's a fun and exciting atmosphere to be in. I love a competition, I love the camaraderie, but it's just fun to be a part of and feel the energy. It's really hard to describe because you do feel it, and it's cool to see people pushing themselves at the highest level they can achieve. It's super exciting. Personally, I don't imagine myself ever competing in a Paralympic game. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen because I don't know what the future holds for me. But I'm super excited to attend and be cheering for Team USA from the sidelines, if nothing else. Because it's a really amazing, exciting thing. So I going into Paris. What's it like keeping your spot on the Team USA? I imagine the competition's it's tough, there's a lot of people vying for the spots. What is that like?
Yeah, it is tough. The U.S. team is consistently one of the top teams in the world, and so we have more players who are good enough to be on the team than we have spots. If that makes sense. We just do.
No, for sure.
We have more players than we can do, which is a privilege. As a country, most countries they can fill out the roster, but they may not have a whole lot of depth behind it. And so it's really challenging. And the reality of it is, and this is true of any high level athletics, I think, is that it takes a ton of self motivation and self discipline. because the reality is, I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. There's a team here in Michigan who I play with and I train with, but none of my teammates from the national team are here, and the last place I lived, none of the teammates were. So you kind of have to really be able to get yourself up, to go to the gym, to train, to work out, to push yourself, yourself to work hard on your own. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is to keep that motivation day in and day out. And it's something that I love it. I love the grind. I think to be successful at this level, you kind of have to love the grind to a degree, because, what I say to people is, like I said, we were lucky to be on, NBC last year. You could watch some of our games, which was really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Yeah. The coverage they've started to do is incredible. And that was really awesome, but it's like, that is the one snapshot, but what got there was years. It's literally years of effort for, 5 games in a lot of ways, and so you have to, we say this, you have to fall in love with the process. You have to fall in love with the grind. And I think this is true of anything you want to be successful at also, honestly. There's the way to get good at anything is to work really hard at it day in and day out. And, like we said, it's baby steps. Some days will be really good. Some days will be not so good, but, we just have to remember that, at least is my opinion, progress in most things in life is not linear, right? It's not a steady upward trajectory. It's like up, you go down, then you go sideways, and you go back, and you go forward. But as long as you're kind of continuing to go to the right, upward, eventually you'll get there. But you have to be comfortable with the idea that it's not a linear process. You're not going to necessarily figure it out tomorrow or the next day. But if you can get a couple steps forward, then maybe take a big jump, and then maybe you get knocked back a little, and that's frustrating. But as long as you continue to drive forward, I think that's what's helped me be successful, is an ability to always kind of keep looking forward and not dwell too much on the past, and really say, like, okay, yesterday wasn't great, I'm gonna make today good. And you do that, and you do that enough times, you find yourself on the right side of things. And I continue to train, I continue to fight. We've got a lot of young up and coming athletes who I'm sure want to have my spot and want to go to Paris as much as I do. And I just have to not have to be too cheesy about it, but to a certain level I have to want it more. And if I know at this point in my career that if I put in the work and want it more, I think I can get there.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it sounds like athletics. You gotta want it. You gotta push and grind and keep yourself at a high level to stay at the top. It sounds about right. I just, one thing you said too is, like, not every day is going to be a win. Not every day is going to be super easy. And I think that's just like a great lesson in general for people who are maybe on a journey for independence or just, rehabilitation and recovery is, we talked about this a lot on the show. Not every day is going to be a win. A lot of those days are going to be, the L's and the failures. And I think there's lots to be learned from those failures. Like, you don't just start out succeeding. You got to work up to that, learn the skills and, go through the grind. But, make sure to keep pushing yourself and give yourself credit along the way. Because, like, even when we do fall down, even when we do, have those harder days and stuff, it's not that we are even necessarily failing. It just might feel that way. But, like, it's up to you to learn from that, take something from it into the next day. So, it'll be better and it'll be more positive and, you'll feel better and, you'll make those gains. And I think, a lot of times too, like rehab, recovery, and, just anything is like, we can find ourselves plateauing as well, which can, I don't know, be a little bit demotivating because it doesn't feel like you're making a lot of forward progress. But, as long as you're not losing progress, that is forward progress. I think too. Like, make sure to continue to give yourself credit along the way and along that journey. That even though it may not feel like, you're making like leaps and bounds and, progress, like, I think that is part of the progress. It's just maybe not an easy moment to see the progress that you're making. So yeah, Steve, patience is important. You gotta have patience. Patience is key, and not just for all that stuff, but I think anything in life. Patience isn't gonna hurt you. We're kind of getting towards the end. I don't want to rush out because I feel like I could just talk to Chuck all day long and forever about this kind of stuff. But it's important. Live to Roll is here because we have an amazing couple of sponsors that we definitely should take a minute to shout out before we get too far into the end of the show. Do you have the commercial, Shawn, or should I just run it?
I have the little video we can play. I'll do the one video and then you can do the Urology Pros on your own. So we got a quick little 40-second video we'll play for you guys. This is our sponsor, Mobility Professionals. And like Tom said, without their support, we would have more trouble even getting these shows going. And we'll see if it's loading. Mobility Professionals is a medical supply company that services the Southern California area. They can help you out with custom wheelchairs, scooters, durable medical equipment, standers, any kind of commode or bathroom equipment, and they also do a lot of technical repair. They have an amazing staff that provides incredible customer service. They will take care of everything for you, for the insurance, doctors, therapists, and all that stuff that just makes your life so much more complicated. They're here to simplify and make things easy. Not only that, but they're also highly active in the local community. They're at a lot of disability events, volunteering, and servicing the community that we all love. Yeah, so that's
a huge thank you to Mobility Professionals and everybody over there. They do a ton for our community. They do a ton to support us, and they are really an amazing business that is leading with our heart, trying to help people's lives be more accessible and more independent, via their equipment, which is a huge part. And to also just shout out their sister company, Urology Professionals. They help you. Anything urological supplies, you need it, they got it, and they'll help you get it. Nobody in this day and age should need or want for catheters if you require them to be functional and healthy and independent. They are covered by just about every insurance company, and if you're not getting them, then something's not right. And the beautiful thing about Urology Professionals is if that is your situation, you call them up and let them know. They will help you learn, understand, and do a lot of the legwork in terms of navigating the insurance and getting you what you need, because nobody should be without that kind of stuff these days. And they are definitely an amazing company that will do anything and everything to get you that stuff. So go check them out. And if you do stop by and talk to Mobility Professionals, Urology Professionals, tell them Live to Roll sent you. That way they know that these sponsorships are doing some work.
Yeah, thank you guys, and thank you to the sponsors. So one thing I actually wanted to ask you about, Chuck, is, so you've done the 3 Paralympics, and I mean, obviously all the world championships, all the stuff, but you've kind of I feel like grown in status through those times, like so much to the point where you were featured on Sports Illustrated this last year. You were a flag bearer. Bam, there's...
Yeah.
So he even got to be a flag bearer this time. So what's that been like to be now kind of the face almost of USA, sports and stuff?
Wow. Well, it's still just some. I see that cover. It's just still hard to believe. It's really just
it's so cool, man.
I was in Boston when they came out. And we went looking for them. We found them at a Barnes and Noble, and I was just like, oh my god, there I am, I'm right there. And I was so excited. I showed the cashier, I'm like, look at me, and he's like, oh wow, it really is you. I was like, yeah. So anyway, it's amazing. It's humbling. Like I said, I'm so grateful to all the people who helped me get to this point. My family, my friends, my teammates, coaches, everybody's done that. But I think the biggest thing, and I say this is the reason why I've tried to create a profile. I've tried to go out and do media and do things like this is because, growing up, I didn't really know anyone with a disability who I could look up to, and I'm certainly not saying every kid or anybody should look up to me, but, I didn't know, I couldn't have named one single person with disability necessarily who was, out there on media or sports or TV or anything like that. And, I think luckily we've seen that changed immensely in the last, I don't know, in my career, at least in Paralympic sport. I think we've seen that grown a lot. And I'm hoping, like you said, I've been one of those people, and it's been really, really amazing to see. And the opportunities have really grown. I've been able to have some really incredible sponsorships from top end companies. The last cycle I was sponsored by Comcast, which is like a major, sponsor and partner of the Olympic and Paralympic movement. And so that's really incredible. Toyota has come on as a major, major sponsor of all Paralympic athletes in the United States, which is amazing. And so I think that it's something that I'm, like I said, it's flattering. It's humbling to see my face up there. I still think I'm just this kid from Minnesota who's kind of awkward, but there I am, and people see me and they get excited to meet me. And it's really cool, and I think that at the end of the day, I guess I should say this. There's a story I should tell quick. Is I was at a Team USA event last year, I think it was. Yeah, last year, and it was all the Team USA athletes. It's a really cool thing we get to do. And this one athlete came up to me and said, "Hey, are you Chuck?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm Chuck." He's like, "Oh my gosh, like I grew up like seeing you play wheelchair rugby, and the first thing I wanted to do was play wheelchair rugby, and I couldn't do that at the time, because I think he was a para of some kind." He said, but I saw you, the first Paralympic athlete I ever saw, and I was like, wow, I want to be him. He's like, I just so excited to meet you, and so it was just really cool, one of these full circle moments for me, for it's like, this is what I've been hoping to do. This is what I've wanted to do, is I've wanted to give kids a role model and someone to look up to. And again, it doesn't have to be me. We have dozens of great Paralympic athletes in the United States, Tatiana McFadden, Brad Snyder, I could go on and on with the Matt Scott. There's a million of them, but if I can just be one of those faces, that's a win for me in my career, to have left a good legacy behind. So to me, that stuff is just all about legacy. If I can be on that cover that shows some kid in a wheelchair, hey, I could be on the cover of this magazine. Like, why not? Why couldn't I be on this cover? Or, that's really my hope and dream for all these things, is to get to that. And obviously it's very cool to get to do it as well. I won't pretend that, but at the end of the day, to me, it's really about, like being a face, being representation for people who look like me, who maybe don't have anybody who they know who looks like themselves.
That's awesome,
that's
man.
amazing.
Really
And
incredible.
it's been great to see the world kind of embrace uh, individuals with disabilities a little bit more,
Yeah.
and just like portray them in like the public space on magazines and in TV shows, and casting people with actual disabilities, and like there's just been a lot more visibility. Like I've noticed in the last like 5 years or so, particularly, and I think it's something that is going to continue to move forward, because the reality is, I think a lot of it's inspiring to a lot of people, disability or not. But I love that story of like I seeing you and watching you and recognizing you and finally getting a chance to meet you, because I've had a few of those individuals myself that I saw, like some of the push girls who were on that TV show, especially Angela, who was a quadriplegic and living on her own and stuff. And I got to like see her when I was still living at home and like teenager. I was like wondering like what my life in the future is gonna be like. And we got to have her on the show and stuff. And I got to see her, talk to her. It was just amazing for me to see and have those individuals too. And without that kind of public spotlight, I wouldn't have had that. Wouldn't have missed out on. Who's to say how it would have affected me? Because a lot of that, it was just kind of like we were saying, something to light the fire, something to inspire me to push myself to achieve something similar. So I think that's very cool. Very exciting to get that recognition, and I'm glad they're giving it to you, Chuck, because you certainly deserve it, man. Super inspiring guy. What's coming up? So you like Paris 2024, and then you said you're gonna be traveling where next?
So this year we have our major tournament. We go to Santiago, Chile actually, for the Pan American Games. That's our qualifier for the Paralympics. So we have that coming up in November of this year. So I go to Japan. The national championships for the U.S. are at the end of April. We head to Paris in October for sort of a World Cup type tournament. That's sort of a prep tournament for next year, as they kind of start to figure out what they need to do to make sure they can host wheelchair rugby best. So it's a busy 2023. We have training camps every other month or so, and so it's a constant grind. It's on the road, but like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a lot of fun. But
well, that was the other thing I was going to ask. Not being together all the time, how often do you guys like practice together? Like, do you meet up like months or weeks before the Olympics and start practicing hard? Like,
we get together about once a month on the season, which is pretty good. So usually that runs from about March to September or October. So once a month, and we do usually a couple weeks. So it's a good chunk of time, and it takes up a lot of our time. But it's how we kind of get our camaraderie, get our together. And a lot of the guys on the team I've been with for a good amount of time. So over time, it's built up a good chemistry. So it's not like starting from scratch every time. When we have new people, we have to kind of get them integrated. But it's not too bad. But yeah, we get together about once a month or so, and then of course we talk over Zoom Zoom and text, and we watch film, and we have meetings and stuff. And that's the beauty of technology is it's helped us. It's really helped us in terms of being able to stay more in touch, certainly. But yeah, it's a challenge. Obviously, in a perfect world, we'd all be in the same place every day, but that's just not how it works. That's okay.
And you said you have a local team that you play with as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, I play for the Detroit wheelchair rugby team. So we're really the team, and there's 2 teams in Michigan. We're kind of if anyone knows the geography of Michigan, we're the southern half of Michigan. There's another team based out of Grand Rapids that's more like the northern half. It's kind of a big state, so we're the lower half team, but we're pretty good.
Okay, cool. And do you like travel nationally with them as well? And
yeah, I actually been to Tampa with them on Thursday for a tournament that we have, and so we've already been to Las Vegas earlier this year, and we hosted a tournament here in Detroit, the Detroit area, and then we have our national championships in Rockford, Illinois, at the end of April, and we're gunning for a national championship. We hope we can get there as well. So
yeah, Shawn and I don't know if we're gonna. I don't know if Shawn's going to be competing, or I'll definitely probably not. But I want to go to Vegas next year and document, the tournament, like some of the sport a little bit more.
Come out, do a live show. It'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
Well, we have a good friend, Kyle McKittrick. He, I think, went and competed for a team.
He's newer. He's just starting,
right? Yeah, he's a new.
Well, he's playing for a lot of the guys that I was normally playing with here in Northridge are playing for Vegas with Bradley, and out of the Vegas they're playing for the High Rollers with a couple of those guys, and Kyle is included in that. He's a newer quad, and he's just eating up rugby right now. Everything he can do, he is in it. Like he is just he's out there pushing every day. He's just like soaking everything up he can, just like. And I remember those days because my first few years, like I just, just wanted to learn everything, wanted to get stronger, faster, it's a great place to be in. Now I'm a little older. I'm just like, I just like to, I think my national team aspirations have kind of passed now. So I'm kind of just like, I want to just play and be, have fun, be good.
Which is great.
Travel with the team.
Yeah, which is great. I think it's important to be active.
I know, Shawn, you do inspire a lot of individuals too. Like you're out in Burbank every week, every Sunday, I have to practice, like teaching and leading and, like helping those people out, which, I think it's amazing, man. And I don't know, bro, like you're the first one who got my ass in a rugby chair too. Like I don't think I ever would have done it if I didn't know you, bro.
And that's kind of it's kind of cool now because our rugby practices aren't super competitive now where we're at. Because like a lot of the guys are gone and we've kind of gotten the gym taken over by Triumph Foundation, which me and Tom, like he mentioned before, we do a lot of stuff out here with them. We do peer mentoring and a bunch of stuff. But Triumph brings people out, new people every Sunday. So we're basically constantly meeting new people, introducing them to the game, getting them in, playing. And it's a lot of fun, it's really cool to be able to introduce so many people to the sport. And so it's been cool.
Yeah, I love it.
I think it's important, for esports too, because it's like the next generation of people who are going to be playing. I mean, without these local groups and these local adaptive rec, like events and things like that, not as many people would know about it. Wouldn't be like Kyle, maybe wouldn't have like gotten that fire to start pushing, fall in love with the sport, and I think that's true for a lot of people.
Exactly.
So get out there. Get pushing, get involved in some local adaptive rec. Doesn't have to be rugby. There's a ton of other, cool, amazing, sports opportunities. But the biggest opportunity I think is just to get involved in the community and start making connections and friendships and things that'll contribute to your life in positive ways that you never imagined before. I promise you.
Yeah.
Shawn, did you have any other questions for Chuck? Anything else on the list?
No, it's okay. I think we could probably. I think I do have more questions, but we're good, man. Maybe we'll get him back on after another.
I'd be happy to.
A little later.
One of the ways we kind of like to wrap the show, Chuck, is anybody out there who's thinking about getting into rugby, getting into adaptive rec, maybe haven't taken that step yet. Got any advice? For anybody out there? General advice?
Yeah, I think your last thing you said, Tom, really was great. But yeah, it's give stuff a try. It really is. And it can
Yeah,
be scary. Like I know it's scary to try new things, and so find a friend, find someone you can bring with, even if they're able-bodied. Just bring them with you. I think that always
yeah,
helps
Yeah.
to bring someone with, so you're not going by yourself, because by yourself it's really tough. But give it a try. Give anything a try. Give it a try if you're and like you said, it doesn't have to be rugby. It could be tennis. It could be bowling. It could be video games. It could be
yeah,
painting. I don't know, but
yeah,
finding that
absolutely.
thing for you, and then dive into it. Give it a try. See how it goes. Really try. Give yourself at least a few times of committing to something before you say, okay, it's not for me. Give it a try. Give it a chance, and I think you'll find something that's you're passionate about. Because to your point, the benefits of being active physically are great, and then also the benefits of your mental health are just incredible. I think
Yeah.
especially in this weird world we still live in, it's hard, we don't connect as much as we used to, and finding those ways to connect is so important and so critical. So
Awesome, man.
For sure, man.
Love
Yeah,
it,
that's
Jack. Thank you so much for taking the time. Come on today,
yeah,
dude.
my pleasure. Anytime.
Super inspiring to me, and I'm sure to many others out there, man. Really excited to follow you to Paris and along the rest of your athletic journey. And
Yeah,
yeah, super excited to have you on in the future and talk about more cool stuff, man.
absolutely, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me, and yeah, anytime, anytime.
And the show's gonna end. Feel free to hang on for a second after the it'll end, and we can still chat and talk.
and yeah, you guys,
But
and we'll and
go
so
ahead,
yeah,
Sean.
like yeah, hang on for a second, Chuck. But just real quick as we end, we're on every Tuesday, you guys. So check us out. We'll be back again next Tuesday with a live, and then we have Brianna this Thursday with the women's show, first and third Thursdays of the month. And actually, since me and Tom are going to the Lakers game tomorrow, and he's not doing the
Yeah.
gaming, he actually is going to be doing his gaming. Is going to be coming up on Thursday instead of
Yeah.
Wednesday after the women's show. So special time and day, but check that out. We got lots of content on the Live to Roll channel. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate y'all. See you next time.